Hi, you guys. Welcome back to the Venus Blueprint channel. And this is going to be a full astrology video on Chiron's meaning classically as being the wounded healer. So part of the dilemma with being a victim, right, and taking the path from victimhood to victorious, and it helps you to zero in on the victim part of you. You really know how to implement the actions to be the wounded healer, not to just be wounded. So we honor the victim. We understand what the victim has gone through, what they're experiencing, and we kind of hold the victim's hand to their victory, utilizing this Chiron formula, which I call, again, astrology in action, mixing astrology and manifestation. Inside of the Chiron sheets are practices and formulas according to your Chiron house placement that you can implement. You can even do a 7-day challenge with your Chiron to work on these wounds that you need to heal. You can find the 7-day challenge within the worksheets. You can also find the Chiron in your chart and 7-day challenge within the Astrology in Action group and course, which is on Udemy. Everything is linked below. So, for example, we already got Chiron and Aries normalizing physical assaults. So we can see Chiron in Aries or Chiron in the first house is often a triggering feeling like you aren't strong enough, aren't fit enough. If it doesn't show up exactly like that, it will be something regarding appearances. And it shows you your triggers with these strangers, which is their facial expressions, a comparison of strength, physique, good looks. So these are the cycles that you want to get out of to help free yourself from the victim mentality of Chiron in first house or in Aries. Chiron in the first house or Chiron in Aries. The formula is that my wound is about who I am and how I'm seen. The things that get under your skin is when you feel unseen, invisible, rejected, or misunderstood by first impressions. Healing begins when you develop radical self-acceptance and allow yourself to take up space without apology. Your medicine, showing others how to love themselves as they are and also how they present themselves. Some of the things that happen with the cycle of abuse in the first house are actual attacks towards your physical appearance. And so you're recognizing how to not normalize that anymore and allow yourself to expand in ways where you're not getting used to it, but you're actually overcoming it. So a lot of the characters that may show up here that you're evolving your relationships to are strangers and people who you make first impressions with, people that audition you, things like that, where you're meeting people for the first time and your first impression really matters. Instead of avoiding this and falling into Chiron's addictive patterns, you can overcome this and discover to enjoy the skin that you're in. And this can be the way that you triumph and help you hold your hand victoriously in becoming your own wounded healer. Chiron in Taurus might be normalizing financial abuse, normalizing material, like weighing materials over people. So somebody who has a Chiron in Taurus, they may have been a victim of somebody really controlling them with money. Really, and the people quite often they could be victims of that. And until they recognize that, they're in that cycle of normalcy. People who have Chiron in the second house or in Taurus can often be seen as greedy to the world, but they're wounded healers because they're actually showing people what they really deserve. Chiron in the second house formula is that my wound is about my worth and my security. And what gets under their skin is when their value is tied to money, appearance, or material success. Now, why is that? Because they're actually going for material success. The thing that they really want to show you is the sustenance, the substance of what they're doing. Quite often people who have this, they get lost in the material success and showing how much money they flaunt or that they have. Sometimes they go from not having enough to having more than they need. and still not feeling enough. So this relationship to valuing material success is what is needed. And every journey is different. Some of you may need to bring more material into your life, and some of you may need to release yourself from material gain. The healing begins when you anchor in your self-worth, when you really know why you're here, what you're doing here, stuff that isn't connected to validation of possessions or material things. It starts to make sense as to why you need to go after material things or why you don't. Your medicine is teaching others how to feel rich themselves. And this is why Chiron in the second house or Chiron in Taurus can be very offensive to people, because the common mind, which wants to be comfortable, right? This is an area that's about comfort and staying fixed. Chiron is saying, yeah, comfort is actually better than you could imagine. So it's not taking people out of their comfort zone, but people get very offended by this as well. This is why you can be dealing with certain characters that are triggering, and any of them that are connected to financial institutions, any concepts of banking and accounting, the person who cuts your check. These are the people who can often become triggers until they become successful, supporters of you. And that is the transformation you're making. With Chiron in the second is your reaction to these financial institution characters and roles. Once you're able to see the importance of them, holding you accountable, maybe even charging you and restricting you, you start to play the game of money and material success in a different way. And it will help in being who you are, valuing yourself at a high level, but not getting too attached to the material outcome. With Chiron and Gemini, it could be a normalized way that people are talking to you, that you don't realize, wait, this is not normal. Like I should be spoken to with either integrity, with honesty, with kindness. So Chiron and Gemini are victims of people who communicate with them almost with intentional misunderstanding. They could be victims of gossip. They could be victims of slander. Chiron in the third or in Gemini often struggles in their victim state of being understood. They have an issue of being understood, and sometimes they don't even realize that the misunderstanding is happening. Some of the characters and agents that they have to overcome and deal with are extended family, siblings, cousins. These are connected to the number 3. These are elements that are connected to when we start communicating beyond our own possessions, right? Instead of just, this is mine, it's, hey, this is yours, right? So Chiron in the third is us learning how to communicate to outside parties. And this issue gets under your skin because you're quite often talked over, or you start to realize that people are pretending or acting like they don't understand you. You could be easily dismissed, and these could be triggers and wounds of yours that cut very deeply because the third house desires so much to be heard. So the key here is recognizing who you're talking to. That's going to be a very big thing. And this allows you to gain more authority around the triggering characters, because you stop seeing everything as one, and you start seeing things as specific, and you start breaking them down and seeing people as a part of one thing versus another. You start to be very calculating here. And this actually helps your Chiron to use discernment in who can actually get it and who can't. That's one of the keys to Chiron to being victorious, is utilizing its discernment and really cutting things down and breaking people down to their understanding, not with communication, but with your own understanding. This starts to change how you communicate and who you're communicating to. You start to seek and desire people who will really understand you versus having to constantly be in conversations where you're convincing others. So it doesn't mean that you never are in conversations where you're convincing, but you really start to enjoy the art of conversation depending on who it is that you are communicating with. And so some layers will have freedom Some layers will have constriction. And the third house is a lot about constriction and expansion. It works in that way, very similar to the sixth house. So learning how to play through the constriction of what people can understand versus people who really get you, and now you have all freedom in the world to take yourself to different places. When you start to see and understand it from this place, you gain so much more victory in your communications. Chiron in Cancer. These could be people who have withdrawn emotion. They're victims of people who withdraw emotions from them. Now, as we reach Chiron in Cancer or Chiron in the fourth, this area is emotional wounding, usually from some sort of neglect of that person's emotions. Some of the triggers can be from feminine matriarch mother types, the family heritage where you come from, the hometown where you come from, and any sort of feminine archetypes. These could all be triggers until you're able to transform it and help them to become agents of your emotional healing, agents of your emotional peace. So the formula for the Chiron in the fourth is to recognize that my wound is rooted somewhere from my home, family, and sense of belonging. What often gets under your skin is rejection, feeling like you're not emotionally safe somewhere, feeling like you don't belong somewhere. And the healing begins when you start to create your safe spaces. Creating safety is something that you may codependently look towards everything outside of you until you really understand how to do it for yourself. You become your own parent. You start to parent yourself. And you also start to nurture your inner child. Now, Cancer and Leo both connect to the inner child. The fourth is the more serious sense of our innocence, and where Leo is the playful side. So the parts of you that remain innocent, that need to see itself as innocent again, begin its healing here. And your medicine usually ends up being that you can help others feel really safe. You can rekindle others to the idea of family just by your being there, your intuitive decisions and actions. You feel like family to others where they may have lost that sense. And that is Chiron being the wounded healer in Cancer or in the fourth house. Chiron and Leo could be victims of people of open humiliation, where Leo is where we shine in the light. These people shy away from the light because they experience this open humiliation. And everything that I'm saying with the signs can go interlaced with the fifth house. Okay, and it's so important because when you don't recognize this victimization, you kind of lean into the parts of yourself that kind of identify with like it being normal, and then you arrogantly put that out in the world, and it's still not quite authentic to you. It's not giving you the joy. So somebody with like Chiron in Leo or Chiron in the fifth house, they can normalize humiliation. It's okay for everybody to laugh at me. It's okay for everybody to do this. And so they lean into that, and they never really get that true sense of the glory of Leo, which is people are not laughing at you, but they are admiring you. They're in awe. They're entertained by you. If you have Chiron in the fifth house or in Leo, this is an energy that is connected to the inner child, that is more playful side of us. Chiron in the fifth house can often overplay, like they can be in the space where they need to play all the time. And this can be very triggering to people because people understand that we need to structure our lives to do serious things and to commit to determination. But Chiron is often the person that is around people who are too serious. And so they become very triggering to these people because they're showing those people how to add more play into their lives. So the wounding is that you're not around people who see the creative being that you are and are constantly having to heal others in ways that they resist you. And you need that sense of being seen for your creativity. We all do. And when you're deprived of it, you're often connected to things that are more like a gamble on your time and on life. They may feel like a lot of fun at first, but after a while, it kind of can waste time if you milk it too far. So the thing here is really turning it around and being back into your creativity as much as you can. Implementing, having, throwaway play versus intentional functioning play, like learning how to do an instrument or honing in on a craft that you're already good at. In the victim state, these people can even show up as shy or feeling like they are too much for others, mocked for how bright they are, how great their personalities are. So often that there is a closedness that happens here, and this is not a house that needs as much closing and restriction. Like the third and the sixth house, the fifth house works so well with joy and expansion. So tapping into what makes you joyful again, and not being afraid of being too much, honestly, is where the healing begins. You're starting to express yourself regardless of what people think. So you don't need their praise, you don't need their attention. And you start to inspire others to be creative, and seeing that creativity and being a part of something big and artful is really showcasing the wellness of your lifestyle. We're not just working hard and doing all the hard stuff, but every day you're really soaking in the morsels of moments where you're connected. This is why the agents of the fifth house are romantic types of people, crushes. You can have issues here when you're overly drained by the people around you. And so these become your supporters, people who now have a crush on you, people who are your, the teachers of your hobbies. They become your supporters rather than your triggers when your Chiron is really healing itself in the fifth house or in Leo. So Chiron in Virgo or in the sixth house, similar to Gemini, can have people who are overtly critical. They're overly critical of you. And it creates this disharmony within you and others, because you can never truly find what it is that makes you of true service, because your service is always in the sense of appeasing other people, or in a very, very mechanical way. Chiron in the sixth house is a space that is learning how to thrive in constriction. It utilizes the things around it in order to get to another place. So the environment, the working space, is just as important as the people in it. But quite often, the wound of Chiron in the sixth is not feeling useful, not feeling perfect and healthy, and this becoming their downfall. What gets under their skin is this sense of being flawed all the time. Nothing is ever good enough, no matter how perfect you attempt for it to be. And the healing begins when you realize that the work and the worth isn't in how much the results are, but it's more in the process, the journey to it. Your medicine is guiding others into their own sense of wholeness. And what is wholeness here? It's actually about embracing your flaws. It's about seeing that you aren't perfect. But a lot of the times, right, when we say the word flaws, you're going to automatically think of something very superficial. And with Chiron in the sixth house is more of the flaws of being human. The fact that we will be impulsive sometimes or over obsessive sometimes. It's the character in being human that actually are the real flaws, not the things that people tell you on the internet, and try to be petty about on the internet. So you're learning that it makes sense as a human that you're going to make mistakes, that you aren't going to get things perfectly. And there's a part of you that agrees that is the game that you're playing the human game. And so now certain agents that seem like difficult matters can now be useful towards you. Excuse me. So things like doctors, people that hold you accountable, your personal trainer. You may never have wanted to get a personal trainer, or maybe you have some obsession with it. Like you can never find the perfect one. Co-workers, the people who can really get under your skin when you don't feel appreciated, you don't feel useful, and you know as a fact that you are the best in town. So what is that inner conflict that's happening? All of these are agents. Bosses, right, who don't see your worth or who overwork you. They're all agents for you to see that it's all coming from you, that you are making the superficial things your flaws versus the real parts of you, the parts of you that are human, the parts of you that can be late sometimes, the parts of you that can be behind. Those are the real human flaws that we all share. And it creates a sense of wholeness rather than distortion. So with Chiron in the sixth, this is your work that you're doing to embrace your wholeness. With Chiron in the sixth, the adjustment is who are you truly servicing? That's when things get really funny because it's never another human. You're servicing the soul's desires. You're servicing the God in you, the higher vision, not these regular people in your everyday office. While you do honor and respect them, you need to see that adjustment to really make Chiron in the sixth work in your favor. Chiron in Libra. Chiron in Libra, the seventh house. These are people who are sometimes openly accused of the energy in being in the seventh house. They're openly accused. And they're victims of these accusations, right? It's stemming off of the Virgo, which is criticism, into accusational force of the wound that Chiron can experience in Libra. Chiron in the seventh is one of the more underrated placements, Chiron in the seventh, the Libra energy, because this is open enemies and the secret agents are not so secret. They are very much so clear. And some of the issues and wounds and triggers of this could be that no one else sees, that you have, specific people who are acting out towards you. It may be in their lack of charm or the way that they kind of like grimace when they smile. It might be more undercut things that can show up with Chiron in the seventh, where you're dealing with relating to people and other people can't see what it is that you see. The other issue here is in partnerships, there could be insecurities, and some of the deeper ones is the desire to be something else, someone else. The desire to be someone else can be a huge wound in your relationships, and this idea of being chosen because you don't see yourself as chosen. You desire something in your mind that you think is chosen. So because you don't see yourself as chosen, you seek in your mind what is ideal. This is those Libra principles. That is chosen, and you can kind of get lost in the justice of it all, that you're not that, right? Or you could adhere and try to be that, but it's always this wound about not feeling like you alone, as you are chosen. And this gets under your skin when you're in relationships, and no matter what happens, you'll feel abandoned. You'll feel unloved. And so the healing begins when you become your own mirror, like your own partner is your own mirror. And you stop looking for everyone else to do it for you because they just simply can't see it. You start to heal the parts that bother you in showing that you are enough. And eventually you can help others create better relationships for themselves. They can be in more long-term relationships because they are experiencing that level of self-devotion first, so that they are really capable of being in a long-term relationship that the seventh house challenges us to do. And this is a way to actually have someone be connected to what we see once we develop in the ninth house, is the person who is the witness of your life. And that's why these long-term relationships are integral to the mathematical patterns of it all and of life itself. Chiron in the seventh house is one of the more underrated placements because of its importance in understanding its role. And people who have Chiron in the seventh really can make a huge difference with humanity themselves, because these are one of, in my opinion, humanity's issues at a deeper level, is the sense of being chosen already. And then once we get into relationships, we have marriage, like there's so much construct that needs rearranging. But even then you could preserve certain elements. I'm rambling, but that is Chiron in the 7th. And in Scorpio, Chiron and Scorpio, Chiron in the 8th house, we have people who could be victims of psychological abuse, right? We could see people who aren't able to empower themselves, so they are paranoid, they're fearful. And paranoid and fearful isn't always a victim shivering in the corner, but it could be. It could be somebody who's like a tyrant because of that paranoia and fearfulness. If you have Chiron in the 8th, you can often get lost in the pretty privilege of it all that we are getting from the 7th. But that's not really your issue. Your wound is around intimacy and your sexual power, which is actually something connected to your strength with Chiron in the 8th house. So the wound is issues with intimacy, sex, power. And the agents of these can be your intimate relationships. This could be also like criminal spaces where they're pinning you to certain bad guy archetypes. It could be like that. And things that are taboo, things that are just a little bit weird and against the grain. And in the 8th house, these are the parts of us that we share intimately with others. And, this is where we just develop the sense of trust. So you often can deal with this kind of like humiliation, or more the sense of being exposed and feeling betrayed, and even having control issues. So with this one, it's very similar to the 5th house in how the personality can get normal with this idea of being exposed. And they expose themselves in a way that feels very creepy, even to themselves, and they really can't get a hold of what's going on. Very similar to the 5th house, where it's like making fun of themselves in a way that is, depreciating. But in the 8th house, it's this expose that you're doing. And you may never really feel like good enough or sexy enough sometimes. So there is a way to do it. There is a way to be exposed and be sexy. And you learn how to do this by understanding what makes you very taboo, what makes you very different. This is also connected to the 1st house and individuality, because of the 8th house being a margin place as well. So there's an energy of being different also connects you to how sexy you are. And this is where you actually build trust. You learn to trust yourself with your own depths, with your own taboo versions of yourself. And now you really are sharing yourself wisely and not oversharing yourself where it's uncomfortable. Your medicine starts to be able to hold a real safe space for you to transform, even if people aren't patient enough. It gives you a space to embrace your darkness, because you see that other people do it and they get away with it. Why can't you? And a lot of it can be even accused of demonic. But a lot of things are being judged on the surface when you're sharing a depth of yourself. And people should really be honored, honestly, that you're even sharing it, because it's so deep and can be connected to trauma and trauma healing that they really don't, a lot of people don't get it. So the agents around these could also be like people who are very accusatory, very similar to the 7th house, accusatory, like mean, not just enemies, but like really mean and gross about it. And you're transforming these agents into people who really get you, who are just really attuned to what you're doing. And they even kind of decode you. They kind of are the detectives to your mystery. And when you tap into that, this really is healing, because Chiron in the 7th, like Chiron in the 7th is more underrated, but Chiron in the 8th is where a lot of people suffer emotionally. So it's really powerful when you're able to make that shift if you have Chiron in the 8th or in Scorpio. Chiron in the ninth house is connected to people who might be victims of religious abuse, of cult-like behavior, that ritualistic abuse, where they almost get some sort of abuse regularly, or the ritual or the religious beliefs themselves are so normalized and toxic that the person doesn't realize that there's other ways of living and believing, and cultural ways to enjoy oneself. And they can sometimes be taken from their culture or ripped from their culture to a degree. Chiron in the ninth or in Sagittarius can be triggered by teachers, religious leaders, gurus, and belief sets, because there is this fear of getting stuck into something that they can't get out of, especially when you think of it mentally, but most especially their actions. So their wound is around beliefs, meaning, and the ability to explore, in which sometimes they may constrict themselves and not explore, not have any beliefs, not want to put any meaning to life. And that would be the repressive expression. So the overly done expression would be probably somebody who's way too faithful to some sort of religious structural beliefs that make them almost violent in their character and movements. So what gets under your skin with Chiron in the ninth or in Sagittarius is when your fear for truth is showing up, or your seeking for the truth is being mocked. If your beliefs are being dismissed or blocked, that can also get under your skin, but a lot of it is your own shadow, like blocking others. And so the healing begins when you're allowing yourself to be led by curiosity rather than dogma. Basically, allowing yourself to still know that there's more to know. Trying to find the unity also in it all, the search for belongingness to all beliefs could also be a way to spin it so you're more curious. Either way, you're finding your own formula so that others aren't making them for you. So it wouldn't necessarily serve me to try to make it up for you, but curiosity is going to help you versus hurt you in this placement. Your medicine is opening your mind and not thinking like your belief or your way of thinking is the only way. At least acknowledging that there are different ones out there. And helping others to find their own truths, whether it is through your own beliefs or guiding them against your own beliefs, and knowing that the key is the search rather than the answer, quite often with Chiron in the ninth house. Chiron in Capricorn or in the 10th house are people who could be victims of control, abuse, people who are always trying to control what they do and how they move. Okay, and this could also be victims of punishment, where people are always punishing you. And some of these people might normalize the punishment, where that's kind of what they are enticed by, and they enjoy it to a degree because they have become so normalized to it. Chiron in the 10th house is somebody who, in their victim state, always gives up. And this might hurt at first, but after a while, it could be a comfort zone. It could be an abuse to their own ambitions and desires to thrive in the material world. And Chiron in the 10th house can see how hierarchical powers are either on top or at the bottom, and choose specifically the top or the bottom. So this could be somebody who overdoes their career and has to stay at the top no matter what, versus somebody who absolutely has lost all ambition because they don't want to play that nasty game of being at the top. And I do feel like the idea of a career is basically the combination of your profession and a vision, and a profession and a vision, right? The profession coming from the 6th house and the 10th house, it is the vision for the 6th house profession, and you don't give up on your vision. So when you have Chiron in the 10th and you have lost the sight of what your career is, or you get really wrapped up in fame and reputation, you lose the fact that you're really guided by a vision and a profession to that vision, something you'll do forever and always in this reality. And it's a very scary thing to do. It's a very scary thing to commit to something that you won't give up on. And this is why a lot of people, no matter the Chiron placement, lose out on the opportunity to be notorious in their life. So Chiron in the 10th house is the audacity to be notorious. It is the slave choosing to be free, basically. And when they are free, you see, when they are free, they no longer fear the hierarchy of being on top versus being the slaves. Chiron in the 11th house or in Aquarius could be people who are also very similar in humiliation or hazing abuse, where you feel like you have to do certain things or be a certain way in order to fit into certain societies and groups. You've got to clear the password at the front door before you can get into the party. And so this becomes this social abuse, this peer pressure abuse. Now, Chiron in the 11th house can also be a very difficult placement, similar to the 8th house, but not emotionally. It's really on the mental plane. This is where the word crash out and spiral outs, I feel, belongs when we're talking about Chiron placements. The wound here is around community and belonging and being too different. And this creates this thing here with Chiron in the 11th, where you can have two different versions. One is somebody who does everything they're supposed to be accepted. They look the part, they are the part, they be the part. But they're very, very probably bored mentally, agitated, because they can see how constricting it is to live that way, even though it's perfect. These are people who can be great influencers, popular even, but kind of feel really confined to the lifestyle. A lifestyle that many would dream of, they are sick of it. And why is this? Because there is this part of them that they're still denying in order to fit in. And there's a fear that if they bring that very different part of themselves in, not only would they lose their lifestyle that is so great and admirable, but they would lose their social impact as well. And that sense of being rejected and not having a home or a place to be admired and popular could be very, very scary. The other end of the stick is the version of Chiron in the 11th or an Aquarian energy that they desire to be behind the scenes, not because they're creative, but because they're scared. They live isolated lives in these cycles of arrogance that maybe they don't need anyone. They have big visions that they can't get on its feet as fast enough because they're just so isolated and so socially deprived that they're doing it themselves. Either way, what gets under the skin of Chiron in the 11th house is the fear of being an outsider or the scapegoat. The healing begins when you're able to claim your uniqueness. For the person who has Chiron in the 11th and they are at the top of their game and fear to bring in that unique version of themselves, they'll have to have trust that the people who are really there to support them will be. This is why dealing with the agents, which are friends of social impact, colleagues of social impact, donors, supporters, and fans, are either the things that you fear because you fear of the rejection of them, or the things that will support you when you do take on a new vision and a new journey to include more of your authentic uniqueness. You now become somebody who builds new trends. And your medicine is building inclusive futures. And you start to think more and more about who that doesn't have a voice that is an extension of you, who else, what other extensions of you are out there. And you build places, spaces, real wishes come true for these types. showing others that they belong and that they have a community that they can belong to and not be ashamed of being their unique self. That is Chiron in the 11th house. Chiron in Pisces in the 12th house could be true mental abuse, in the sense that somebody has changed the way that you perceive yourself. And so your subconscious beliefs have been blocked from you. Your true beliefs of yourself are blocked from you because somebody has you've been abused by self-concept, a self-concept abuse. You're detached from your true ancestry. You may be detached from or fragmented from your spirituality or spirituality in general. This can lead to senses of atheism and senses of void, like being a part of the void, rather than recognizing the whole of immortality and the soul that lives eternal. One is blocked from their spirituality in these small, acute ways, fragmenting them from their sense of true belongingness as a soul being. Chiron in the 12th, or in Pisces, Chiron in the 12th is dealing with the agents of the unknown. They can be severely fearful of this. It's like coming into the 3D realm and being like, what am I doing here? And when I get out, what happens to me? I feel trapped in all of the unknown. The wound is around the unseen, the subconscious, and feeling deeply lost at a soul level. And what often gets under your skin is that you just feel overwhelmed by the emotions of life. Everything just feels overwhelming. You feel a spiritual disconnection and a deep, severe, shaking fear. The healing begins when you surrender yourself to it all, to your sensitivity and your ability to connect to something greater. If you can feel the fear of your emotions, but not see them or touch them, then you can absolutely start to see where there might be something else that you can't see or touch that's in your favor. Your medicine is healing your connection to the spiritual realm. And through intuition, artful ways, dreams, and spiritual guidance, you're able to actually connect into the unknown in a way that seems more exciting and fulfilled rather than fearful. You really can see the two differences in the way of life. It's either to love or to fear. And fear can actually feel good in a lot of ways here. And so the agents of spirit and the unknown in dreams can become these fear demons to you. Spirits can be something you're scared of. The unknown becomes something you're scared of. And you're scared to go to sleep. You're scared of everything. Everything is an agent of reminding you that you have no control of life and of death. And it scares you tremendously. It's one of the deepest human experiences that we're here to overcome. And as Chiron in the 12th, you are the healer of the wounded healers. In understanding that this plight that you've taken on in this journey to have this placement means that you are a warrior of love, if you so choose to be. Chiron in the 12th can quite often feel tainted at a baseline. It is the image of the idea that we're all born in sin. It is the deepest of the darkest, and it can manifest it that way. And the key with this is the choice, the freedom that you do have can awaken you in a world that can make you feel so small, galaxies, and there's so much beyond you. It can make you feel so small. The ego dissolves so instantly into nothingness. And so you're learning that there is life, right, in the nothingness. You're learning that you do have a choice. You do have at least one choice to choose fear or love. In the choosing of love, the agents in the 12th house now become supporters of you. In choosing to see spirits as love, you connect deeper to them. You start to name them or start to find out what their names are. In choosing love with the unknown, you start to see the world and life as a canvas rather than this empty black hole. In order to choose love, you start to see your dreams as something that can reveal deeper parts of you that you're willing to explore, and instead of something that, just keeps you away from the consciousness of it all. So in choosing love, these agents now become your supporters, and that also becomes an exciting thing when you start to see that you have the choice in that relationship. This can be a detachment from the soul, off of often of neglect, and the soul needs to see that so that it can reach higher than the circumstance. Very similar to Chiron in Cancer, who can also experience some of these spectrums of neglect in the victim state. This can be something as simple as, like, I was just watching the other day a mom working out and the baby's just watching her, and I'm just thinking, like, what if she would grab the baby's hands and make her, like, playfully work out with her? It's these, like, small, acute, minor moments of neglect that create this real deep loss of self, because we're just not developed enough for the soul to see itself without someone else being able to see it. And so this is why we're so attached to the feminine archetypes and the mothering archetypes. That's why we need that so much. And, Pisces is connected to Jesus, but without Mary, there is no Jesus. And that's because the soul needs to be recognized through the other soul. So this has a lot of connections of the souls being able to see each other, and even though it's an unseen matter. And I'm sure that there are other people who could explain this better than I can, but I thought I would just end on that, you guys. And that is Chiron seeking its true healing, becoming the wounded healer in your chart. Now, if you'd like to go deeper, check out the worksheets that I have on Chiron and the Chiron section in the Astrology in Action course on Udemy. Peace and love.